Hello, and welcome to the Departed's first how-to video. I'm Fayan, and I will be your guide. In this video, we take on Anub'arak, the fifth boss in Trial of the Crusader. The Anub'arak fight has three different phases. During the first phase, Anub'arak will be tanked above ground. Our tank kept him near the middle of the room, but placement of the boss is not vital. Just make sure that DPS is positioned behind the boss, as he does a powerful AoE frontal cone attack that deals damage to anyone caught in it. This will freeze your tank for approximately 10 seconds, but can be dispelled. Before the fight begins, you want to assign one ranged DPS to shoot down the frost spheres floating in the air. These spheres have 3000 HP, and once down, to create a patch of permafrost on the ground that reduces movement speed of enemies traveling through it by 80%. The permafrost does not despawn on its own, but Anub'arak's Impale will remove it. We also notice that the spheres can be death gripped. The permafrost becomes more important during Phase 2, as described later. During this phase, Anub'arak also casts Penetrating Cold on a random raid member, dealing 3500 frost damage every 3 seconds for 18 seconds. Frost resistance gear will mitigate some of this damage. The damage is easy enough to heal through without any sort of resistance gear, though if you have a spare paladin, you may want to throw up frost resistance aura. There will also be adds that pop up one at a time. These adds, called Nerubian Burrowers, have 218,000 HP and need to be picked up by your off-tank and tanked on a patch of permafrost. This prevents the burrowers from submerging. If the burrowers do manage to submerge, they will come back 15 to 20 seconds later with full health. I advise that you have all of your DPS ignore the burrowers during Phase 1 and then burn them in Phase 2. Alternatively, you may also have ranged DPS switch to these adds to keep your tank from being overwhelmed by adds during Phase 1. In either case, we had our off-tank stay clear of the boss with the burrowers, as on previous attempts he had been hit almost immediately by the pursuing spikes when Phase 2 began. 1 minute and 20 seconds after engagement, Anub'arak will submerge and Phase 2 will begin. During this phase, Anub'arak will randomly target one member of your raid and pursue that player, leaving behind a trail of pursuing spikes. If a raid member is caught on these spikes, they will be thrown into the air and dealt approximately 3000 damage, ignoring armor. If Anub'arak reaches his target, he will impale them, dealing anywhere from 17,000 to 20,000 damage and throwing them into the air, causing an additional amount of falling damage. This attack also ignores armor, but cannot penetrate permafrost. We found it easiest for the person that was being pursued to kite Anub'arak away from the group. Please keep in mind that he does seem to pick up speed as he goes, and if you have movement increasing abilities, use them while being pursued. Because his impale does not penetrate permafrost, you may also have the player being pursued kite him to a patch of permafrost to avoid being hit. Anub'arak continues to summon Nerubian Burrowers during this phase. Your tank should pick these up and tank them on a patch of permafrost, as they do in Phase 1. Another type of add is also summoned during this phase. These are called Swarm Scarabs. They have 18,900 HP, and while they don't hit exceptionally hard, they do put a stacking debuff on anyone they hit, dealing massive amounts of damage over time. This debuff lasts for 1 minute. Our healers were able to keep us up, but of course you should do anything you can to lessen the strain on the healers, as they will need the majority of their mana for Phase 3. Our group, though not shown in this video, found it best to stack up on the tanks during Phase 2 so that we could AoE the adds down relatively quickly before the debuff was applied, while the person being pursued kited the boss away from the group. After approximately 1 minute, Anub'arak emerges from the ground and Phase 1 begins again. These two phases trade off until Anub'arak reaches 30% health, at which time Phase 3 begins. During Phase 3, there will be no additional ads summoned. It is a good idea to burn any of the remaining ads before Anub'arak reaches 30% to allow all of your DPS and healers to focus on the task at hand. At 30%, Anub'arak casts a raid-wide Leeching Swarm. This debuff drains all raid members of 10% of their current health and heals him for the same amount drained. It is advisable to keep up some sort of healing-reducing debuff on Anub'arak, such as Mortal Strike, Wound Poison, or Aim Shot, to keep him from healing too much for your DPS to overcome. We had 3 healers during this phase, 1 assigned to each group and 1 more for the tank. Please keep in mind that Anub'arak still casts Penetrating Cold during this phase, and his target will need extra heals. At this point, it is basically a race against the healer's mana. You should save all your mana regenerating abilities for this phase and blow all your cooldowns to get the boss down as quickly as possible. If all goes according to plan, you should get Anub'arak down with very little difficulty. Thank you for watching, and good luck.